Guys, it's the 1122 Wingnut Radio, and Jazz is out walking around with me. And I did a little story a while back ago. I think I'm gonna have to tell the story again. This is kind of neat. I don't know if you can see that. All these little gnats. Flying in that little. Anyway, I wanted to tell a little story. There's an old cemetery plot out here in the middle of the woods that I know of, where this back in the day was a quite wealthy or well-to-do family, and they're buried out here. But I wanted to show you a few things. Now, the reason why I say they were well-to-do is because back in the day, you actually had to have a pretty good amount of money to have slaves as property. All right, and now this fence line, this is actually somewhat new. I mean, it's probably past I don't know, 10 or 15 years. But there was always been a fence line going around this deal. And let's see here. Where is it? Oh, there's one. You go back here in the woods outside of the fence property, and here lays, that's the footstone, I'm assuming, and right there's the headstone. These were considered, I guess, the field slaves. All right. Now let's see here. I think there's a few of them back here, but there's two main ones that are easy to find. Here's another one. This must have been a child. A footstone and the headstone over there. I mean, if you can see that. Wasn't a very big person. Now there's a few more back here in the woods somewhere. But the field slaves back in those days weren't important enough to bury inside the family plot. And inside the fence line is the family plot, basically. And this one, he was in the Indian Wars. 1st Brigade, Florida Militia, Indian Wars, September 29, 1785 to November 12, 1840. All right. I can't remember who's the oldest out here. It says that's February 9th, 1909 to May 3rd, 1917. So he was a pretty young one. And here's another one that's Russ Company. I'm not really putting their names out there, but anyway, Florida Home, GDS, Indian Wars, 1780 to 1847. Now, this is another thing too. You see all these little markers right here? These were slaves. These were, I guess, considered the house slaves, or, you know, the important ones. Now, there's probably about, I'd say about 20 people that are buried right out in this area. Not all of them got markers. Some of them, you know, the markers have either laid down or disappeared. But there's about 20 people out here. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the family that this is their plot. Actually, I put that bench there. I put this bench there a long time ago. It's kind of wet. Damn it. I was going to sit down. Maybe I'll sit over here. Let me stretch my legs out. And let's see if I can see stuff here. Anyway, can't really tell my damn. It's so bright out here right now. But anyway, the thing is, see, back in the day, or even today, see, back in the day, when the powers that should not be actually considered slavery legal. All right, and when people had slaves, you know, they considered them property. All right, you know, they were just assets. And today, it's the same thing. The powers that should not be considered all of us, actually, no matter what color we are, assets and property. And we have the obligation to just, you know, do as we're told and obey. And they think they have the moral right to rule over us. Now there's an old story, you know, that you know, there's a difference between a house slave and the field slaves. Now, if the master's house was just for some reason to catch on fire, you know, get hit by lightning or something happened and the damn house started catching on fire. Now, those field slaves, they all be standing back, probably hoping to God for a real nice breeze to burn that motherfucking house down. And the master's in it with it. But those house slaves, now they ain't had it so good. You know, them field slaves, you know, they lived in, you know, pretty much whatever shacks they built for themselves and had a hard life and, you know, just trying to survive without getting killed. But them house slaves, you know, they had clothes on their back, food to eat, a house to live in. They ain't had it so good. So those house slaves for instance, if the house was to catch on fire, them house slaves would go out there and get some buckets of water and try and put the house out. You know, help the master put the house out. You know, because to them, you know, they ain't had it so good, so they didn't want it. They didn't want it to go away. They wanted to keep what they had because they didn't want to go back to what it was. And what I'm trying to get at is, it's those three groups of people. Even today, we've got that today. We've got the powers that should not be, quote unquote, the masters of the universe. And then you got the house slaves, and then you got the field slaves. Now, the field slaves, they're the backbone. All right, they're the backbone of this country. All right, they're the ones that did all the work, got really little in return, didn't really keep a lot of what they earned, if any at all. But they're the ones that built everything, the ones that picked the crops and did all the work to keep the plantation alive. Now the house slaves, they just really, all they did was just kept the standard of living for the masters even more comfortable, so the masters didn't have to do anything. They did all the cooking, the cleaning, taking care of the house, taking care of the kids, taking care of the women, because most of them were women, the house slaves, most of them were women and children. And that was one of the ways that back in the day they kept the men in line. They used the women to kind of keep the men in line so they wouldn't rebel or fight back. And then the same thing with the children. They'd be teaching the children, just obey, do as master says. Because if you don't do what master says, he'll beat you. I got nothing. I love women. I got nothing against women, but even all through time, even way back in the back in the day, it was Eve that took the temptation and convinced Adam to take the temptation. And then you also have, Samson, how he lost his strength by having his hair cut off through the temptation through a woman. But the woman was being used to do that. The thing is, even right now in this cornholio virus that's going around, or that what people think is going around, and the excuse they're using the cornholio virus to do what they're doing, they're using the women to convince them and get them to convince the men and everybody else. And it's the same thing when it comes down to even different colors. Now me, I've got family that are black. I am not racist in any way. I am prejudiced, but I am prejudiced against ignorance. Especially in this day and age, man, there's no excuse to be ignorant. When you have all this information at this moment at your fingertips, using like a cell phone or a computer or whatever, You got no fucking excuse to be ignorant. And when you are, it's because you're doing it because you don't want to know. You just are too lazy to do research. You're too lazy to read. I mean, and this can go for any color. It really doesn't matter. It's because I know ignorant fuckheads that are white. I know ignorant fuckheads that are black. I know ignorant fuckheads that are brown. It don't matter what color you are, man. There's ignorant fuckheads no matter what color you are. But and that's one of the problems. They're taking advantage, the powers that should not be. Let's say this family right here. Now they might be, like a couple of them, they might be good at heart type people. But the way they were brought up, and the way they thought that they had that moral high ground to tell people what to do, and those people had the obligation to just do as you're told and submit to their rule. Now I get it. There's a lot of them that were born into it, so they were taught this way. But this has been going on for centuries in one way or another. And today we have that same exact thing. These so-called elites, these so-called people with power and money and influence, thinking that they know better on how we should conduct our lives than we do. They think that they know, and we should just do as we're told because they think that they know better than us. Now, in this day and age right now, when it comes down to this coronavirus scenario, you've got three types of people. You've got the masters, you've got the field slaves, and then you've got the house slaves. Now, the field slaves, like I said, they're the backbone. That's the general populace of this country. That's the backbone, the people that do all the hard work, that build this country basically from out of nothing, and get a meager wage and forced to live the way they do live. Otherwise, man, a lot of them would prosper, but they're forced with regulations and laws and statutes, codes and policies and all this other stuff, and then taxed, which is nothing but theft of the earnings of that labor. In a lot of ways, man, if Master's house was to catch on fire, all those field slaves out there wouldn't give a shit if it burned to the ground. They'd actually be better off. But there's those house slaves out there. In today's society, in today's scenario, those house slaves, they're the ones that are like working for the government, for instance, or something like that. They ain't had it so good, because they got it pretty good. They got a guaranteed paycheck because the earnings of the labor of the field slaves get extorted from them to pay their way and pay their living. So they can live in a nice house and have a nice car, put their kids through nice schools, have good, health care, whatever. So a lot of them, if the master's house was to start burning down, they'd do everything they could just to put it out so they can keep what they got. The only problem is they're still slaves. They're still slave or servitude to a master. Now the master don't give a shit about any of them. House slave, field slave, no. Don't give a shit. It's just nothing but property, assets, They didn't give a shit about the house slave, having a conversation with the house slave and all that other stuff. Yeah, I mean, there was times where, some of them actually became friends and all that stuff, but in reality, they didn't care. They were just really looking for profit. They were looking to have their life comfortable by the sweat and labor of those slaves. That's the same thing today. It's just now it's everybody. It doesn't matter what color you are. It's everybody. Honestly, it's not necessarily the masters that I fear, because honestly, man, we outnumber them. And honestly, man, if they put us too far back up against the wall, we're gonna hunt those motherfuckers down and hang them, take their heads off, whatever. But what does scare me in a way is all those little house slaves out there that are willing to protect these masters. All these masters, they're willing to protect them and their property. Do as they're told. They're the ones that kind of scare me more. But in the end, you see this little cemetery plot out here though? In the end, you all up into the ground no matter what. You all end up in the ground no matter what. Masters, the slaves, doesn't matter. You all end up in the ground anyway. But I guess it's where do you want to be buried? Inside the fence line or outside the fence line? And where do you think you are? Where do you think you're going to get buried? Inside or outside the fence line? Today, these self-appointed masters of the universe, they're the problem. They are the true viral infection and the true pandemic on this planet. Technically, the way I see it, they are the true enemy of all of us people. No matter if you're a house slave or a field slave, they're still the true enemy. But yet, what they do, these masters of the universe, what they do is they try to get all of us to fight amongst ourselves. White, black, male, female, rich, poor, whatever. You got more than I got, whatever. They try to they put all these little parameters and these little paradigms out there for all of us to sit there and fight amongst ourselves on, while they sit up there on the porch, out there on that porch swing, watching it happen and giggling. It's like, yep, look at them all fighting each other. It don't matter to them. They still got the plantation, they still got the house, and they still own all you guys out there. See, today we are basically owned, and it's getting worse because of this cornholio virus, because they're trying to actually make it even more ownership over our lives, over our bodies, over our DNA, and our future generations, and put us all and even more monetary slavery, and then on top of that, our genetic slavery. People, I don't know what to tell you. If you guys, it's a thing. It's one of them things. If you don't learn and understand history, you are doomed to repeat it. And, this is not new. This has been going on for centuries. I mean, even Jesus was, during the time of Caesar, there was a ruler named Caesar back in the day when Jesus was around. And, there was the house slaves and the field slaves. And then there was the master. So it's been going on for centuries. I'm just going back as far as that. Excuse me. A little tickle in my throat. So, I mean, it's nothing new. It's been happening over and over again. It's like cycles. I'm a radio guy. I like to talk on the radio. And I know when it comes down to cycles, like for instance, the sun goes through 11-year cycles. And when it gets to the peak of the cycle, of that 11-year cycle, and the sun puts off a lot of solar flares and stuff like that, and that when that hits the ionosphere, it pushes around a lot of those signals, those radio frequencies and the radio signals and stuff like that, and it pushes them out a lot further. So I mean, distance wise, it's pretty nice, because I could talk and listen to people so much further away when that happens, versus just talking to people within 100 miles of me. So I mean, it's nothing new. It's kind of like a cycle that keeps on going. And there's a part of me is like thinking that we need, as a people, to break that cycle forever. Break that cycle of slavery, break that cycle of masters. I mean, this is the thing. There's that. Some people say it's never going to stop. There's always going to be somebody bigger and tougher and whatever, got more guns. But it all comes down to fear. Also, it's like you get. Just the average people out here, they're just, a lot of them are just scared. And when you're scared, you tend to, just do as you're told. It's time for people to grow some fucking balls, where our future generations for thousands of years in the future will not have to deal with this shit any longer. Basically eradicating this idea of master and slave. Now I know this video has gone on a long time, and but I thought I'd come back out here to this little plot and talk. I've done this. I did this once before a long time ago. And I was basically having this same type of story and this same type of conversation. But I do have some new subscribers out there, so I mean, unless you've gone through a lot of my, gone way back into the past of my videos and stuff, you really wouldn't come across this. So I want to kind of redo it again, and get y'all's opinions, and because this is not just here in the United States. It's not just here. This is worldwide. It's like them guys out there in the UK and England and stuff. I mean, you guys living under a monarchy and a queen, all that stuff for how long now? Even the queen. You know how much property the queen has or has control over? It's like billions of acres. I mean, it's everywhere. It's every freaking continent has some small group of people that think that they can just do and tell the rest of us how to live. And if we don't comply, they think they have the absolute right and they have the willingness to kill you if you don't. We need to flip that script. Need to flip that script. Worldwide. We need to flip that script. I started thinking about just combat and warfare, and I'm not a combat veteran. I've never been in a combat scenario, but I've studied history, and I mean you think back in the day where two armies, they just kind of lined up and faced each other, and that's how they did battle. And then the warfare kind of changed when it came to guerrilla warfare came into play. Right now, for decades, most of us have been just kind of living our lives and not really thinking about, how to protect ourselves from an enemy. We're just, out there paying our bills and, having our families and living our lives, and going to football games and watching TV and Jerry Springer and all that bullshit. So nobody was even thinking about it. But the other side of it has. And they've been doing it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 360 some odd, 65 days a year. And they don't sleep. They do it all the time. They're always plotting and planning on how to defeat us, if necessary, or whenever they feel like it. Especially if we decide to stand up and revolt. So we right now don't have the organization and the that they do, because they're pretty well organized and heavily armed, and they have a lot of the logistics already planned out. Majority of people, just average people, we don't. But maybe it's time to change the whole face of combat and warfare. I mean, guerrilla warfare is actually pretty good. It works pretty good. I mean, you look at back in Vietnam, for instance, the Viet Cong, they knew, even though they lost a lot of battles, they knew that, like setting booby traps or whatever, they knew if they took out one person out of that platoon, it would cripple that platoon. Maybe if we kind of take those same type of tactics, but, put it in a modern context here on our own soil against the true enemy. But on an unorganized, unpredictable way of doing it. Because right now, I mean, if we were organized, man, they've got control over all of our communications. They've got control over all of our movements. They got control and surveillance over everything, and it's getting worse and worse day by day. So maybe it's time to change and flip that script and kind of do it differently. Something that they're not expecting. Kind of like some points from the Art of War. And I'm sure a lot of them people out there have been studying that book too, but kind of take some pointers from the Art of War when it comes down to how to do stuff. Anyway, it's going to take forever to download this video, and I just wanted to sit here and talk for a minute. This is the 1122 out here for Anarchy Television, and I'm back out.